Thank you, everyone. Uh, my name is Zain Aziz, and I'm a project manager here at Dig Worldwide. Now, for those who are unaware, Dig Worldwide is the primary intelligence company. And if you're wondering to yourself, well, what is primary intelligence? In essence, it is a form of human intelligence gathering. And hopefully what I'll be helping to do today is walk you through a process that is somewhat forgotten about, but cost of goods intelligence and how we at Dig conduct this. So cost of goods intelligence. At present, there is a model that has been put in place known as technical cost modeling. But at Dig, we thought that actually there's a different way in doing it. We thought there's a better way that saves more time and is more cost efficient. So it's an alternative to TCM. Our method is a robust and field-tested cost of goods benchmarking tool. And it can be applied across a broad range of industries, from pharmaceuticals to textiles to automotives even. But the question remains, why benchmark in the first place? What's the purpose of benchmarking? And how can we actually do it effectively that we meet our clients' goals? I'm hoping in today's session I'll be able to walk you through the bottom-up method of technical cost modeling, so the original kind of cost of goods assessment, and how our 7-step method of COG intelligence benchmarking is different and how it improves upon TCM. So if we begin with TCM, or technical cost modeling, we can look at its strengths and weaknesses and how we can carry that out. So TCM was actually developed by individuals at MIT about over 30 years ago at this point. And it's often used as a gold standard for industries in being able to assess how different companies are to progress with their R&D strategies with the commercial needs of organization. So whether that be introducing a new product, introducing a new process, opening up a new facility, how are we able to do this, how are we able to do this in comparison to our competitors and do it efficiently, but also cost effectively? It allows you to compare alternative strategies internally, but also benchmark against external companies too. Now, this methodology will start with identification of an overall process and the steps actually required for the manufacturing of a product or product component. In order to do this, TCM essentially splits up the process into its constituent components. So we can see this from a bottom-up perspective, in the sense meaning that we break down what are the variable costs of this process. So this could be materials, labor, utilities. What are the fixed costs? What are the fixed costs of a process? So cost of equipment, buildings, overheads, tools even, and also the cost of capital. Once these costs have been identified from internal accounting sources as well as public available data, we can progress with TCM. But a question arises, if we're looking at publicly available data and this data isn't necessarily available, how do you conduct TCM? In essence, you have to do a best estimate. And that in itself isn't the most reliable. And that's where we found this gap in TCM and tried to improve upon it. So here's an example of TCM kind of fully costed. What we looked at is kind of the automotive industry for a particular vehicle. And you can see the kind of breakdown of different of the cost profile associated with it. In addition to being able to kind of put together a cost profile with TCM, you can also conduct sensitivity analysis. So what this is able to do is essentially determine the impact of change to input assumptions. So again, what this means is that when we're looking forward, when we look into the future, if something changes, how drastically is that going to change our cost variability? But there are some strengths and weaknesses associated with TCM. When we think about its strengths, it's the fact that you're able to kind of benchmark your process against other competitors, which can be a really helpful tool. But like I said previously, when we're trying to assess kind of the cost of these competitor products or these competitor processes, If that information isn't made available in the public domain, we're using estimates. And that in itself means that we have a model that isn't particularly reliable or isn't robust enough. In addition to this, TCM sometimes it is relatively expensive, but also takes a long period of time. So if you work in an industry that is changing rapidly, a question then arises, are the output that we've produced and the time that it takes to produce it, is it going to be accurate for this point of time, or has the industry moved on? So this brings us to our new kind of 7-step COGIntel benchmark approach to cost of goods assessments that we've come up at Dig Worldwide. So how does COGIntel differ from TCM? As I said, this is an alternative to TCM, and it'll help us benchmark against supply chain operations for one or more organizations. In summary, COGIntel can be split up into 2 main phases and 7 steps. Phase 1 can be comprised of kind of this functional intelligence, which comprises of steps 1 to 3. And what we try to do as a company is outline what needs to be compared and how the product is made or the product component is created from a structured top-down perspective. We then move on to steps 4 to 7, which have been classified as phase 2, and which operational intelligence happens. So we then seek to actually benchmark how these products compare from one company to another. So we look at step 1. It's in essence what we'll try to do is really outline our client's manufacturing process so that it can easily be compared to others. So what this really looks like is working with our clients, understanding what their process is, speaking to different team members, and almost creating like a process map. So we're able to fully understand that, well, this is your product, and this is how we actually get to our end goal of creating this. Step 2, we then define a standardized equivalent manufacturing unit that can be compared across companies. And this is a cornerstone in the methodology itself, because if we're unable to define what it is that we're looking at, or what it is that we're looking to essentially compare, then that task becomes infinitely more difficult. Thirdly, we then describe fixed and variable manufacturing costs of an equivalent unit. So of that unit we've just defined or we've just identified, we try to understand what are the fixed costs associated with it, what are the variable costs associated with this. We then move on to our operational intelligence, again from steps 4, which comprises step 4, 7. And this is where our primary intelligence capabilities really kick in. With primary research, we're able to outline and describe how our competitors' manufacturing processes are conducted, and we can benchmark those targets. We then use primary intelligence to describe and compare our fixed and variable costs, and again, benchmarking as to what our clients are doing and what their competitors are doing differently. Again, utilizing primary research, we're able to determine ex-factory prices of an equivalent unit for each benchmark. And then finally, we put all that primary intelligence together, and we compare against our benchmark targets. So again, we highlight performance gaps. We're able to understand where there are areas of competitive intelligence, but also where there are kind of shortfalls when comparing these companies. So this is a worked example. This is an example of what a type of project that we worked on Dig Worldwide. And this is with CAR-Ts, which is an innovative cancer medicine. We're able to work with a pharma client and really understand the overall process as to how it is to actually create their product, which is known as a CAR-T, from extracting the patient's blood, to proliferating cells, to getting that product release. But this is a key component, and really being able to understand how this pharma company executes in extracting the patient's blood all the way to this product release. We then have to define an equivalent unit. So again, like I mentioned, this is a key step, because what we're trying to do is really understand what is the product that we're working with and how can we compare it to others. So in other industries, we can potentially use toothpaste, for example, as an equivalent unit. So when we look at toothpaste, there's different variations with them. They come in different packages. They come in different volumes. So when we approach our client, what we try to do is to understand what is the standard unit or what is the standard product, and then we are able to go ahead and compare this to other competitors. So again, like I said, this method can be applied across industry, whether it be kind of personal hygiene to kind of pharmaceuticals, all the way to energy as well. We then describe fixed and variable costs. So again, speaking with our clients, we're able to identify what are these fixed costs, what are these variable costs, getting tangible numbers, and then convert them into percentages, which then allow them to be comparable to their competitors or companies of interest that they've highlighted. Step 4, 5, and 6 all use primary intelligence, but use them slightly differently from each other. So when we look at step 4, we dig a little bit deeper. We try to benchmark our client's process against others. What are they doing differently to others? What are their competitors doing differently to them? We then try to understand the fixed and variable costs of these companies, and then again, we convert them into percentage, which allows them to be a little bit more comparable. We also look at the X works price of equivalent units as well that we uncover. Again, with this example here, what we were able to do was work with our client to understand what their process was and then benchmark that against another competitor's process. So understand the differences between the two, highlighting where there's competitive advantages as well as highlighting where there's competitive disadvantages. We're then able to essentially create an equivalent unit cost profile. So again, understanding what is the actual cost in producing this product and how it differs from our clients. And this is all done via primary intelligence. So again, having these conversations with individuals that are associated with the company or potentially were associated with this company. So understanding what has happened and how it's progressing or how it's changing. Sorry. We then move on to our final step, which is again comparing benchmarks. As I previously mentioned, what we're able to do is not only quantitatively describe the differences between these companies, but also qualitatively describe the process similarities, but also differences. So understanding what we're doing and what our clients' competitors are doing a little bit differently. COGIntel differs slightly from TCM purely because where TCM uses a bottom-up approach, we choose to go with the top-down approach, which allows us to be a little bit more dynamic, but also faster, allowing our clients to make better informed decisions within a timely manner. Once again, this is an example of a CAR-T manufacturing facility in which what we were able to do was, through primary, understand what our client was hoping to achieve, but also what their competitors are planning to do so. So how is this manufacturing process taking place and how does it differ? Where are the pros, where are the cons, where are the learnings that we can take from and take this back to our client and help them move on and progress? Once again, you can see here an example of a process when we look at API, manufacturing process, in the sense that we're seeing how our clients' process is different to their competitors. And again, a cost of unit profile, but we focus on percentages. So when we look at a particular product, how much does it cost in terms of fixed costs and variable costs to compare each other to? Another example that we actually carried out for 3 particular companies on behalf of our client, what we were able to do is really understand that actually when we compare them against 2 other companies, there wasn't a massive difference in terms of costs. And what that meant was there could be cost savings made elsewhere and not necessarily on the manufacturing process itself. So it's being able to identify where resources could be better utilized to ensure that you have a product that is cost effective, but also is competitive. So as I previously mentioned, COGIntel is a robust, time-savvy, and cost-efficient service offered by Dig Worldwide. Our cost of unit equivalent, the ability to define it, sits as a keystone for the COGIntel methodology. And what we're able to do using this method is compare the cost of goods manufacturing unit using a top-down analysis. I thank you for your time, and if you have any questions, I'm more than happy to take them. I will be present in the conference hall at booth number 14. Thank you very much.